Hello everybody and welcome back to another one of my how to play videos. Now this time I'm going to show you to be playing Here to Soleil. Now I haven't done a card game video for a while because I haven't had a chance to get any more games or to really play them that much. But this time I have gotten more cards and more card games, but I haven't practiced enough on most of them to give you any tips or tricks currently. But don't worry, we'll get to that soon. So Here to Slay is a game done by the people who's done Llamas Unleashed and Unstable Unicorns. It's an Unstable Unicorns type of game. So if you like that sort of game, and if you've watched my Llamas Unleashed video, then you will know it's a rough idea of that, and I'm basically going to teach you how to play it, and I'll give you some advice on how to win as well. The main things are, this is a very luck-based game, so it's not like you can have a strategy, but ultimately it does come down to dice rolls, which I'll show you here. You get 2 dice with every pack. So it will come down to dice rolls, and I'll explain why in a moment. You will get a rule card as well, and it shows you what the rules are. Focus. It's not focusing, but it says you need to kill 3 monsters to win, or you need to collect 6 of these sets. So you have to have each one of these in your field. Now, what does that mean? Well, I'll get to that as well in a moment. So, I'll explain the basic premise of the game. So, you start off by choosing a party leader, which is these guys. So, you get these cards you can choose from. I will show you each one. Shadow Claw, Protecting Horn, Charismatic Song, Cloaked Wizard, and Divine Arrow. Each of these have special abilities to make things easier for you. For example, Divine Arrow gives you a +1 dice roll when you fight a boss. So every time you fight a boss, you'll start with a +1. And the main gimmick of this game, it works on points. So you have 3 points each round, and each point, and you can do multiple things with each point, and I will go over that in a moment as well. You also have boss monsters that you will be using throughout the game, so you'll be having different ones, and they will require a dice roll to beat. So if you're a fan of doing anything like that, then you can, this will be the game for you, right? They'll each have special requirements. For example, this Bloodwing here has 2 H's, that means heroes, so that's how many heroes you have to have in your party. But for example, this Rex, it says hero and a guardian, so you need to have a guardian specific hero in your party. Now I'm gonna put this all on a base, and then I can show you what your sets are meant to look like. So give me just one moment. Okay, so this is sort of like the setup you'll be having. Sorry, my camera angle's not great, and neither is my lighting, so I'm just going to move these things about a bit. So you want to have your boss deck here. You want to have 3 monsters in place, and then you'll have your main deck here. As you can see, I have put 1 hero out, or 1 party leader that my opponent has, and I have chosen the Divine Arrow as mine. Now you can choose anyone, they'll each do separate things like I said. So for example, here's one, we'll give him anytime a magic card is played, get to draw 1 card. Now each of these do different things. As you can see, each time you roll for a hero effect, you'll get +1. Again, I'll explain that. Each time you roll a modifier, you'll get +1. Again, I'll explain that one as well. Anytime you get challenge, +2, I'll explain that as well. And then this one, it says each time it's your turn, you can spend a point to pull a player's card from another player's hand. Now I will explain the point system first, because the point system is probably the most important system that works in this game. Each turn you start off with 3 points. Now I have different cards in my hand, so I'll show you. All these are very self-explanatory. Modifier you can play at any time, but during your turn it will cost a point to play. This is what a magic card looks like. You can play this once, do what it says, and then discard it. These are hero cards. As you can see, this is the bard type, and then this is the roll for effect, and this is the fighter type. That's what's in my hand currently. I have no idea what's in my opponent's hand, but that's what I'll just go over. So with your points, you can do as many actions as you want. So for example, 1 point can let you either draw a card, which for example here, or it can let you play a card. So for example, if I chose to use a point to draw a card, I can spend another point to play my card down on the field. I'll put it here because you can't really see it that well. So basically, Sorry, you might hear a bit of background noise. I think one of my neighbors is cutting something and that's really irritating currently. But we move on. So then what would happen is whenever a hero card is played, you see that number there. That's the number of effect. You roll the dice and you see if you get the effect. Now, you can on your first turn playing the card, it doesn't cost any points to use it. As soon as you play your hero card, you can roll for effect straight away. Now, there are some cards which say, oh, you can destroy another hero. So for example, if he had heroes on his field, it'd say roll a 10 and destroy another hero in someone else's field. You obviously don't really want to play that on your first turn, because if you do that, then it's pointless. If you do get the 10, you can't destroy anything in anybody's field. So what would be the point in that? So that's what points do. So I could spend 1 to play a card, draw a card, and now for 2 points, you essentially pay to challenge the boss. Oh, and also actually no, let me explain one more thing. When you have points as well, with this guy, you can pay a point to steal a card from another person's turn. So if it's your first turn, you can pay the point and take a card from someone else's hand. Now, however, this specific hero is banned on one-to-one play in the rulebook. So you can't use Shadowclaw unless you're playing at least a 3-player game. I guess it's for balance, because if you could just take a card from opponent's hand every turn, it'd be a bit irritating for them, especially if you're about to challenge a boss and they have a negative modifier. But I digress. Now, for 2 points, you can challenge one of these bosses, but obviously you need an effect. So as you can see here, you just need 1 hero to play. This one you need 2. This one you need 1 hero and 1 fighter. So you just have to have a fighter on your field and 1 other hero. So for example, I have a fighter in my field, and if I had the bard, I could play those 2 down. Oh, shit. Camera's going. I could play both of those 2, and then I could challenge the boss if I wanted to. And that's what you can normally do with 2 points. But for 3 points, what you can do is if you don't think you have a good hand, my hand's decent, but if your hand isn't, you can choose to discard your hand entirely, which would go to a discard pile next to the main phase, and draw 5 new cards. Now this strategy, here's my first tip, is if you only have 1 card in your hand or 2, and they're not good, just discard it and just draw 3 new cards. I wouldn't recommend doing it on the first turn, because you might actually have some good cards, but it tends to be whenever you don't have 1 card or 0, you might as well just discard your hand and then end your turn, because the thing is you only get 3 points per turn, so by doing that you essentially skip your entire turn, but it might be worth it for a new hand, is this essential thing. Because you're wondering, but why would you ever use that many cards? Well, here's the thing. Obviously on your turn you can only use 3 points. So for example, if I challenged a boss, and then I used 2 points, and then I used a modifier. If 2 other people on their turn, they don't need to use points here, used a modifier, then that would counteract my modifiers, and I can't add more modifiers from my hand because I don't have enough points to use them. But if someone else is challenging a boss, I can use one of my modifiers in my hand, and that would stop them doing that. Now there are a couple other cards that I'm going to show you. For example, we have a cursed item card. You can play this on anybody else's hero. So if you successfully roll to use this card effect, you have to discard a card. So for example, if I had this card and it's a 7 to use the effect, and I had that, and then I ended up rolling a 7 on the dice, then I would have to discard one of my cards to use it. And then we have the better equipment card. This is what you'd use if you successfully rolled the hero's effect, draw a card. So I could put that on my hero, and if I choose to use his effect, then I can get the points off. My recommendation with a lot of these cards is do them on rolls where it's a lot less, essentially. So on some cards it'll be a very low roll and it might not be a great effect, but if you choose to use it, then you essentially get a free roll anyway. There is a specific strategy that I do kind of want to tell you about. There's also another one. Where is it? There's a good one. Let me show you a couple of the other abilities first, though. These are called masks. Now, basically, what you can do is this an equipped item card. For example, you have 5 heroes on your field, or no, let's say you have 7 heroes on your field, but you have one of each of these, but you have 2 thieves. If you don't want the 2 thieves because you need one of each, you can equip it with a Guardian Mask, and that will change its characteristic to a Guardian, and that will also help you to fight a boss monster that requires a Guardian to defeat. Now, here's the thing about that is you could also put it on someone else's field. So for example, they've played a Guardian, and then they've played an Archer. You could put this on their Archer, it will cost a point, but you can put this on their Archer to make it a Guardian. So that essentially gives them 2 Guardians. Next card I would like to go over, as if I can find one in the deck, is known as a challenge card. So this challenge card can be played at any time. So it's best not to play it on your turn. But the challenge card, essentially, if someone's playing a hero card or a magic card, if they try to play a card on their turn, you can challenge that. And the way challenges work is once you challenge it, you both roll the dice. Whoever gets the highest dice roll will win. Now, here's the thing about the dice rolls. Obviously, you want to get the highest dice roll. So if you successfully do it, their card gets discarded. If they win, they get to play the card. And if it's a hero card, they can roll for effect as well. You can't challenge anybody who's using a hero effect. So for example, I had this and I couldn't get the effect of the first time. If I pay a point on my next turn, I can just roll for effect and you can't challenge that. You also can't challenge anybody if they're fighting a boss. Also, if you're like, oh, I want to fight the boss, I like challenge you, you have to beat me in a dice roll to do that. No, that doesn't work. Now, the one thing I will also say about the bosses is here it says how much you have to get. Now, this is actually a bad example on that one, so I'm not going to use that one. Here it says if you roll a 10, you get to kill this boss, or 10 or higher, and it says 7 or lower, you will have to sacrifice one of your hero cards, which is on the field. There are some that are a lot nicer. So for example, something like this, it says if you get lower than a 4, you have to discard 2 cards. Now, here's a quick tip. If you're planning to beat bosses, if you have like these requirements, I would always recommend fighting these bosses first, because the worst that can possibly happen is you'd lose 2 cards. Whereas here, you have to sacrifice a hero. It's a very much risk versus reward. And also, if you beat one of the bosses, you'll get a special effect. So each time a player, including you, plays a modifier card, you get to draw a card. That's a pretty decent effect, but for how much it's worth, it's a bit tedious. I mean, the Wyvern effect isn't that great. It's each time you roll for the challenge +1 to your roll. It's not a bad effect, but obviously this one is better because modifiers probably will get played pretty often. Now, here's the thing. In the official rules, it's if you get a 7 or lower. If you want to be a bit more lenient towards your players, you can play as if you get a 7, you'll still be fine. But if you get lower than a 7, you can discard a card. Because for example, if I get an 8, I don't have to sacrifice a hero because I got higher than a 7. But if I get a 6, then I would. And then you can either play it as if you get 7, you also have to discard a hero, or if you get 7, you're safe. The official rules, I believe, say if you get the actual 7, you'd have to discard, but me and my family are a bit more lenient, so you can do it as if you want to be a bit more lower, just to be a bit nicer to some of your members of the team and anybody who hasn't played before, just as a warm-up, and then maybe you can play it a bit further. Also, with the challenge card, you can see here, this is what this guy's effect is. So if you feel like you're going to get challenged, the Fist of Reason, you get a 2+ to each of your rolls. So anytime a challenge is played, either you play a challenge to someone or they play a challenge to you, you start with a +2. So for example, you got a 10, your roll would technically be a 12. So making it like they would have to get 12 to tie with you and then roll again to see who wins. And for example, this one, Charismatic Song, if I played a hero card, I get +1 to my roll. So for example, anything like this one that says draw 3 cards and discard a card needs an 8, I would only need a 7 because I start with a +1. So those are like the main ways you can do it. Obviously, if you obviously can't win in one turn because there's no possible way you would have, well, 1, 6 heroes in your hand, 2, you don't have enough points to play 6 heroes either. It's unlikely someone's going to let you challenge them to win. So now I'm going to go back to my main station and I will tell you a couple of my tricks and what I recommend. Okay, now I'll give you a couple of my strategies that I think will help you to, if you want to play a bit more advanced or if you just want to have a better time winning, these are probably my best options for you. Now, my personal recommendations are, if you're going to pick a hero, I personally will go for the Archer just because having a +1 to my rolls to fight the boss is actually quite a decent idea. It's just the fact that like it saved me a bunch of times. For example, if you need a 10 and you actually get a 7 to die. This will get you to an 8, and you need a little bit lower. That's very helpful. Shadow Claw is also one of my favorites to actually use, mainly because the randomly taking from someone's hand could be, again, useful. Even if you're playing a 3-player game, if you think one person's probably going to stop you if you can realize what's in their hand, or if you like know they have a modifier or something like that, then it's probably worth taking and then fighting the boss, because then at least you don't, at least they can't really stop you if they have a challenge card. Other cards that are quite useful that I recommend doing is playing this magic card, which lets you get 2 rolls to the end of the turn. Any cards that will give you pluses to your turn is worth doing. So for example, with modifier cards, if you're going to challenge a boss, I'd recommend, if you have a modifier in your hand, challenge the boss first, because then even if you lose, you can play that modifier. Even if it's not enough to kill the boss, you might have enough where you don't lose a hero. For example, again, if the boss is a 10 and you get a 6 and your modifier pluses you to a 3, yes, you're only on a 9, but at least you don't lose your hero and you pay a point and then your turn ends. You know how it goes. But that's also the thing. Anything that gets you plus rolls is always worth doing. So for example, like this Vibrant Glow Guardian card here, it says if you get a 9, you can plus 5 to all your rolls to the end of your turn. Now that is extremely good. So if you play Guardian cards, a lot of them will be like, oh, you get a plus rolls till the end of your turn. I highly recommend, if you're going to take on bosses, that you have like one of those Guardians, or maybe even this one, Wild Shield, which is another good one. It's a lot less, it's a 6, but you get plus 3 to your rolls till the end of the turn. So that's also another strategy. If you have those cards in your field, might be worth paying a point just to see if you get it, because if you don't, then you can just play 2 other cards, or you can draw 2 cards. If you do, then it's probably worth challenging the boss, because it's probably more likely that you'll either get enough to kill it, or that you'll get enough to at least not die. Each boss has special effects as well. So for example, you kill a boss, you'll get special effects like I showed you earlier with the Wyvern. Each boss has different special effects. So for example, the Wyvern, each time you roll to challenge, you get +1. So anybody who's got a fighter, or the hero fighter, the Fist of Reason, probably going to want to go for that one. There are other ones which are very good to use, like for example this guy, your heroes can't be destroyed. That is a very good card. Yes, it does 11, but that is a very worthwhile one to have, especially if that's your only one. So for example, if this is on the field first and you manage to kill it, you don't really need to fight bosses anymore. Like, you can keep going if you want to fight bosses, but your heroes can't be destroyed. So you can choose not to fight them and not risk the rolls. You can just keep playing heroes and see if you can get them. Now, I also explained the difference between destroy and sacrifice. If it says you may destroy a card in another player's field, that means you get to choose the hero that you destroy. If it says another player has to sacrifice a hero, they get to choose which one they destroy. That's the difference, if anybody doesn't know, between destroy and sacrifice, because I know my family get confused a lot of the time on if you get to choose which hero or not. Obviously, if you're going to destroy one of the heroes, pick a person who's probably got good with sets. Like if they already have 4 of different kinds, probably worth destroying one of theirs rather than someone who's only got 2 in their field and it's 2 archers, for example. If it's 1 archer and 1 thief, it's not really worth it. If someone's got an archer, thief, guardian, fighter, for example, just take out one of theirs. It'll be a lot easier for you in the long run. Also, another very noticeable boss. This one requires you to have 4 heroes, the giant slime or magic slime. This is probably one of the most worth ones also killing besides the Tirtouga. It's because you get an extra action point. So you get to use 4 points, essentially. Yes, and it's only an 8, but it's almost a perfect roll that you have to get. If you don't get an 8, again, you can choose how you play it, but if you get a 7, you lose a hero, or 6, depending on how you want to play it. But if you get an 8 or higher, you will kill it, and then you get an extra point. So essentially, you can actually get 4 points, and you could fight 2 bosses per turn, or you could challenge the same boss twice, or you can challenge a boss and use 2 modifiers to make it easier for you, just in case someone else might use a modifier, or anything of the sort. Those are like my main ones, I'd say. Like, a lot of the other ones aren't really that great. Like, for example, this owl, it says your item cards can't be destroyed. It depends how often you play items, because that's not really a good one. Either that, Same with like this mammoth. It says each time you draw an item card, you can play it straight away. Obviously that doesn't cost you a point, but it's not really the best one either. Other stuff like that is pretty good, but you know, those are probably like one of your better ones that you're gonna want to use. This is also another good one that you can get pretty early, and it's kind of like the slime or the Tortugas. Each time you roll, you get +1. So you already start with a 1 to your roll anyway. So it's likely that you get quite good, and that's a little bit easier than the Tortuga or the slime. But that's also not a bad effect to always have a +1 to your rolls, and that will apply to anything else. So for example, I have the archer here, and I want to challenge a boss. I start with a +1, and my roll will already be 1. So I'm already starting with a 2. Which makes it a lot easier to get, for example, a 7, because all I need to get is a 5, which I know is probability what you'll roll anyway, so I could get 12 and get 14, but you know, it's just like you feel like hopefully you get a low roll, hopefully a high roll essentially, and it'll work. Those are like my main tips you can use to help you try and get a win. Like I say, it is RNG, and if you are like behind, I'd probably recommend just fighting bosses. That's probably one of the better chances you have of winning. Main reason I say that is just because if you're behind and you have like a bunch of heroes, you might as well, and you're gonna lose because someone else has like 2 heroes, like 5 in their field, and they're probably gonna get it. Because I remember I was playing with my family, and I kept trying to play bards, and they just kept getting challenged, and I kept losing dice rolls. If I just kept fighting bosses, I probably would have been fine. And also, if you have like a lot, for example, if I had 3 archers, you might as well fight a boss, because even if you lose a hero, you choose that one. So if you have 2 archers, you might as well fight a boss, because you have 1 to spare, so you might as well at least try it. Worst thing that can happen is you'd either lose an archer, or you'd kill the boss, or you kill the boss and someone uses a modifier to make sure you don't kill the boss. Also, modifiers can only be used after someone's roll. So for example, if you're going to play a modifier before someone fights a boss, they might choose not to fight the boss. So obviously your modifier wouldn't work. So you only play a modifier after someone's roll the dice. Those are like my main tips. I haven't played this game that much. Obviously I've played it quite a bit with my family, but I haven't discovered too many tricks like I'd have with Llamas Unleashed, because unfortunately I live alone now, so I don't get as much time to play card games with people or with my family as such. But hopefully this helped. I know it was a bit all over the place with an explanation, and it's not as structured as I would like it to be, but hopefully you got the general gist of how to play. Hopefully some of the tips will help you in the long run. The only other thing I would say is a lot of these heroes, it really depends on who gets to pick what. Obviously turn order can decide on however you want to do turn order. My only thing is, if you're gonna pick this guy, it's a cute bunny, but you're probably not gonna play a magic card that often, and it says you play a magic card, it doesn't say everybody. Draw a card, that's not really a great effect. That's probably like one of the ones I actually wouldn't recommend going as your party leader, just because magic cards, like I said, it is all RNG, and drawing is random. So you could have a bunch of magic cards in your hand and get extra cards, or you could not. That's the problem. That's why that card that's probably the most RNG card you can have, or RNG hero. So you probably don't want to base your stuff on that. You'd rather pick a hero where it's guaranteed rolls, like the archer or even the guardian, that gets you an extra to your modifier, which can be useful when fighting bosses as well. But hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Sorry if there's a lot of background noise in it. Obviously, like I said, someone's probably doing some work outside, and that corresponded as I was recording. So hopefully you all enjoyed, and maybe I have more card games that I want to show off and teach you how to play, but you probably have to wait for that. But until then, I'll see you next time. Bye.